Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
All right, Lakers lost by 41 last night. Good start to the show.
41 points. And as J.J. Redick said, I'll take accountability, but so does the people on the court. Not great. Not great, Steve.
He's not wrong.
No, he is not.
Okay, he's not wrong.
Mm-mm.
All right, I keep telling everybody all the time, when you're looking at coaches, remember, players execute plays. Mm-hmm. Okay? Keep that in mind.
Yep.
Most don't.
No.
But, basketball tonight, Big Ten opener at the Jordan Center against the standard bearer of the Big Ten in recent years. Michigan State had been in that spot before, but now it is Purdue. Purdue is off to a 7-1 start. The one loss was to Marquette, and in fact, to be honest with you, it was rather decisive.
Yeah. Decisive is putting it mildly, but yeah.
So that is tonight. I mean, Braden Smith is a terrific player, and that'll be one of the really fun matchups tonight. Braden Smith, Ace Baldwin. That's a fun matchup to watch for. There is no question that Lawyer 59% in threes.
As lethal as they get.
I'm not going to sit there and say he's the best standstill shooter in the country. I'll say he's one of the top 5. That way I've got some leeway because I haven't seen everybody.
Yeah.
But 59%, great standstill shooter. Flaws in his game? Yeah, he's got them. No question. No, he does. I mean, he has flaws in his games.
I know.
He's not a driver. He's not a great defensive player. I mean, but as a shooter, standstill shooter, he is
as good as they get.
He is just tremendous. Kaufman-Wren has become the big guy, but they don't have what you'd call rim protection. And I know everybody thinks Edey at 7'4", what a great shot blocker. No, he wasn't, but he altered so many shots. And he also altered your thought process going into the lane more than he blocked shots.
That's the thing with anyone who's above like 6'11", 7 foot, is when you get there, you look and you see this man who Zach Edey's, 7'2", 7'3"?
7'4".
7'4", and he weighed how much? Like 300 some odd pounds? Like, you see him and you don't want to go for a shot because naturally the angle is going to be different. You got to get to a different place on the floor. You got to get far enough away from him and also not be near another defender. Like, it's just a tougher shot in general. So a lot of players would back away and take it back out and give it to somebody else. And Kaufman-Wren is not Zach Edey, nor is he even Isaac Haas or one Matt Harms or one of the other guys.
But he's a good player. This guy is a good scorer. He's a good rebounder. He is Kaufman-Wren's a good player. They just don't have rim protection, okay? They've done a great job with Cam Heide, bringing him along, and Miles Colvin, who hit the game winner against Ole Miss, bringing him along. Have a couple of freshmen that have been up and down early. They basically have right now an 8-man rotation. Caleb Furr's coming off the bench. And they're just really good. Pace of the game means something tonight. Purdue does not and has for years not played at what you would call a blistering pace. They're in the bottom 5% in possessions per game in the country. They're only about 65, 66, right around there. Penn State, on the other hand, is in the upper 10 to 15%.
When Penn State can run, they will beat you.
Well, you have to rebound to run. Okay? You're going to get missed shots. You have to rebound. You rebound, you can run. And if you finish, you then get to set your press up. So you have to hit shots, you have to finish. That sets up the press.
And there is no better team in the nation, as far as I have seen. I've not seen everybody, but the press of Ace, Puff Johnson, these guys, Nick Kern, Freddie, like, it is a hounding press. What just watching last game against Buffalo was enjoyable.
That's Marquette, by the way.
Yeah, Marquette does that. And that's what Marquette does. And they, of course, I think blew the doors off of Purdue, is fair to say. And
there's no question they won decisively.
And as someone who, like, I got to travel with you and watch the team play and be at these games last season, and the player I've enjoyed watching most in the press is by far Puff Johnson. He just is so good at the timing of exactly when to move to come over and double. He is just as good as they get at it. So watching him and Ace and Nick hound a ball handler, incredible. And it's going to probably be what hopefully tonight is if you're Mike Rhodes.
So
hounding Braden Smith, hounding Lawyer.
I'm always just impressed by how Purdue plays its game. They play their game. One of the more important things you need to do in a game like this is you play the man, not the jersey. Don't sit there and go, oh, it's Purdue. They're really good. No, the heck with that. Play the guy in front of you. Personnel changes. Go out there, play. You're on your home floor. Hopefully the fans will respond tonight and be in the Jordan Center for this game. I know the students were just getting back to town. There weren't many at the football game. There weren't many at the basketball game, so I do understand that part of it. But everybody's back right now, and the game is tonight. I was, and then after that, it's on a plane.
Then you're off. Then you are off to a city in the same state as where Purdue is from. Funnily enough, you're going to the same area generally that they are going to.
Sure.
And it is going to be number 3 versus number 1 this week. The college ball rankings came out. We have not been able to discuss them yet on the show. So just going down the list.
I thought we talked about it on Tuesday. But
we talked about it on Tuesday before it came out.
Before it came out. Okay.
It came out Tuesday night. Oregon is sitting at 1, Texas 2, Penn State 3, Notre Dame 4, Georgia 5, Ohio State 6, Tennessee 7, SMU 8, Indiana 9, Boise State 10, Alabama 11, Miami 12, Ole Miss 13, South Carolina 14, Arizona State 15, Iowa State 16, Clemson 17. Those are the ones that count and the ones that have some impact or could have an effect going forward.
Well, right now, Miami would be out.
Miami is out as things stand. Right now, I know Miami is slated as 12th, but Arizona State will come on up and take that 12th position as the 5th conference champion.
Or Iowa State.
Or Iowa State. A Big 12 winner will come up to take that slot away from them. Because, of course, they're guaranteed a location. And right as things stand, Penn State is 5, and Penn State would face Arizona State if today was when it was decided. It'd be Penn State, Arizona State here in Beaver Stadium, which would be a little bit different of a temperature from Tempe, Arizona to State College, Pennsylvania, with how it's looking outside right now.
Or Penn State wins the game Saturday and gets a bye into either the Fiesta Bowl, the Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, or Peach Bowl. Those are the 4. The Fiesta Bowl, by the way, is the Friday night, December 31st game.
So that is New Year's Eve.
It's New Year's Eve. Then the opening game is the Peach Bowl on New Year's Day. Then it's the Rose Bowl in its usual 5 o'clock time spot. And then it's the Sugar Bowl to close out the day. So that's how that works in terms of, that part. So that's what's going to be at stake for both teams on Saturday night. The right to win the championship, trophy, a ring that goes with it, everything big, and then an automatic trip to the quarterfinals.
And when it comes to
now, as for Alabama,
yes,
okay,
Alabama. Let's start there.
Let's go to what the story is. Penn State and Oregon are locks. Texas and Georgia are locks. Okay, so they're teams that are locked in.
4.
Right, Tennessee's a lock. Ohio State's a lock. You go through. The schools that are locks.
Notre
Dame's a lock, right? So that's all done. That's why I said they'll pretty much have the bracket close to being done when Penn State and Oregon kick off, because they're not going to wake up on Sunday and go, oh, God, what do we do now? So, come on. They're going to sit down, take a look. There aren't that many games to look at anymore.
There are 6 games that we are watching. It is UNLV, Boise State, and Tulane Army Friday night, 8 o'clock. Hypothetically, Army could somehow sneak in if things go weirdly. They're too far out, I think, to have any effect on this. But UNLV, Boise State will, because if UNLV comes up and beats Boise State will probably drop out of the top 10 slots at least, and math will become weird.
The only way they'll be in is if they're a conference champion. Right? I mean, that's the only way. They know that's the only pathway for them to get in to be the highest-ranked conference champion.
So you have that game for those 2 games Friday. Saturday at noon, Iowa State, Arizona State. Saturday at 4 is UGA, Texas. And then 8 p.m. is, of course, both the ACC with Clemson, SMU, and the game you will be at, Penn State, Oregon, in Lucas Oil.
Right. So let's get to the Alabama situation. All right. Now, I always tell people, hey, look, I have no problem telling everybody, like, if I got something wrong, I got something wrong. I mean, you have to be honest with the audience. And I said that unless it was a conference championship game loser that came in with 2 losses, like, for example, Georgia loses, it'll be their 3rd loss. They're in. I said that was the only scenario, and I said this for months, where a 3-loss team could get in. So in other words, Clemson could get in. They've already got 3 losses, but they could beat SMU and they get the automatic bid. Okay. That, to me, was the only scenario. Evidently, that's not the case, because let's start with this. Nothing between Alabama and Miami is going to change between now and Sunday. 0. Miami's out. Alabama's in.
It's decided. It's done. And anyone...
the result of the ACC title game is not going to determine them being in or not.
The only way it would have had any impact is if Miami had played Clemson. If they had played them, and let's say they had beaten them, and then Clemson goes on to win it, or SMU goes on to win it, and that looks like a better win, it doesn't exist for them because they didn't beat anybody. And that's part of the problem here. Is their one good win you'd say would be against Duke, who was good, who might end up cracking top 25 after all things shake out at the bottom. They may sneak in at 25, but that's their best win. And this is the case that everyone's made, is that Alabama, yes, has 3 losses, but they've actually had wins that matter. And this is the thing you and I talked about on Tuesday of Bama beat Georgia, Bama beat South Carolina, Missouri, LSU. Those are all good wins. And also, Ole Miss and South Carolina, we're taking them out of it because they already either A, lost the other 2 teams, or B, have even worse losses than Alabama does. And Alabama has real wins, and Miami doesn't. So
Miami also has led for a long period of time at Charm Life. 3 games that they won where calls helped swing games for them or directly won a game for them. So one of them, okay, would be the infamous one. That's the Louisville game on the return. You're like, that's not a, okay. That was not a good call. All right, but bad calls happen. The targeting call in the Cal game, right, or the lack thereof, changed everything. Cal's winning. Cal's got the ball. Cal has momentum. There is no question. This is one of the easiest targeting calls you're going to call in college football, where Cal would have had yards, first down, the ball, and they're in the process of putting the game away. Okay? I mean, they would put the game away, but they were in the process of doing it. And the 15 yards would have been a huge deal. Yet, for whatever reason, it wasn't called targeting.
Nope.
He launched, went helmet to helmet, hit him with the crown. It was one of those calls that takes about 20 to 25 seconds to make. Like, okay, let me just get 2 views of this. Okay, we're done. And they didn't call it. That was embarrassing for the league. Not as embarrassing as the Virginia Tech game. The Virginia Tech game, again, I pointed out over and over again. Do I think they, in the end, probably got it right? Yes. But it's not your job on replay to fix what you think happened. The rule is you must have indisputable video evidence to overturn a call. The call on the field was a touchdown. Right? Call on the field was a touchdown. Okay? Minnesota USC, same story. Call on the field was down at the half-yard line. Now, do I think he got in, Brosmer? Yeah, I do. But they didn't have a view down the line of the play. They had a view from an angle, which gives you a different, skews the perspective of the play. You can't sit there and fix. I'm telling you, I think it's an incomplete pass. But you have to have the viewpoint to show it. And part of the issue is bodies. You can't really tell in the Virginia Tech thing because there's another body flying in there. You're like, oh, okay. And so I was watching it live when it happened. And then, I thought, wow, what a miracle. And I said, to be honest with you, I'm not so sure it's a catch. But then I'm watching it over and over again. I can't tell whether he caught it or not. Well, if you can't tell whether he caught it or not, you have to go with the call on the field, which was a touchdown.
And that's why they have call stands. It's call confirmed, call reverse, and call stands. Right. Stands is there to be like, we just can't tell. Right. We're going with what happened on the field.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
And that's fair because sometimes you can't really tell. It's not that definitive. And I'm telling you, a play like that, right? You won. It kept you going, but I'm kind of wondering if in the end there are some people on the committee saying, to be honest with you, they didn't really win the game.
Mm-mm. And then they came up against good teams. They were down against Duke. Their offense brought them back.
Yeah.
They then lost the next week to Georgia Tech. They beat Wake Forest, not a great team, and then lost to Syracuse after being up 3 scores. They blew it in the second half against Syracuse. They were up 21-0 and blew it.
Yeah. Well, there's more to it than that because we have to get to the Alabama part. Alabama lost to a good Vanderbilt team on the road. Not great, not awesome, not incredible. Vanderbilt's good, which means they can have really good days or they can have a day like they did against Georgia State where they lost. Okay? But Vanderbilt is good. They then also lost. I mean, their losses are perplexing. The Oklahoma game, I get back to the hotel room in Minneapolis, and I put on Oklahoma, Alabama, and I thought, we'll watch a little bit of this. I'm watching the game like, what the heck is going on here? Because you got to give Milroe credit. Milroe can turn in one of those wow games. And he also still has a tendency to turn in one of those, whoa. And that was, because look, here's his issue as a quarterback. He's got one speed. Everything he throws is, he's like a Aroldis Chapman, all fastballs. And it's an issue.
11 for 26, 164 yards, 3 interceptions, including the pick 6 in the third quarter, which was a truly bad pass.
It was a bad play.
It was a bad play, bad pass. He just missed a guy who was staring at.
Yep.
And pick 6 for Kip Lewis. So Alabama, they have these perplexing losses to Oklahoma. Vanderbilt's a decent team. They lost at Tennessee, which is, it happens. You lose by a score against the top 12 team in the nation. Like, you can at least give that as like a, okay, it happens type of thing. And they have the good wins. They beat Georgia. Yep. They went in to Camp Randall and beat Wisconsin. That's still a decent win.
Oh no, that's a good win. Just like Penn State went there. They beat Wisconsin more decisively than Penn State.
42-10.
Right? And Penn State beat Wisconsin more decisively than Oregon. With Bo Perbula at quarterback, not Drew.
Yeah, they beat Wisconsin in Wisconsin. They beat Georgia. They beat South Carolina, Missouri, LSU. They had good wins, and Miami does not. And that was the point you made on Tuesday and said that's why Alabama's going to be ranked higher. And spoiler, they are. And Ole Miss and South Carolina, they're out of it. They just don't have enough.
I told you what the top 5 were, and the 5 came out that way, and I said Alabama would be in front of Miami.
You said it'd be Alabama, Miami. I think you then said Ole Miss, South Carolina in the order of the 4. And
right.
It's exactly what we got.
Right. Believe me, I just guessed. It's just about educated guesses.
But we got them, and now we know the rankings, at least as of this moment. And as Ward Manuel,
Miami can't jump Alabama.
And that's what Ward Manuel said. And you wanted to know, he got asked by Reese Davis. Reese said, and he asked for clarification and said, I want to give you the out here in case you may have misheard me. And they went back and discussed it again. Ward Manuel said, any team that is not playing a game, they're done. We don't have any other points to analyze them on. You can't analyze Miami because they didn't play SMU or
they have no data points. They have no data points
no.
that they can gain out of this. I mean, in other words, they are locked in where they're locked in.
Yeah. The only team that is currently a question mark, if they are to lose, if you win, you're in right now is the end point. The only team that can lose and be out
is Boise State.
Outside of, well, in terms of in that chunk, but it still has a chance to get in at the end, is SMU. Boise State, if they lose, they're out. I think that's kind of a given at this point. SMU is the question that everyone's got.
Right, they're the question. They're the only ones that can bump Alabama out. Miami cannot go up by SMU losing because, remember, Clemson would get the automatic bid. They would be slotted in there, and they would have to play, in all likelihood, they had to play on the road. I mean, okay, because if Boise State were to win, they would be one of the 4 with byes. So that's, I mean, this has turned out, it's interesting how you go through the ebbs and flows of a season, the ups, the downs, the opinions every Monday, overreaction Monday, over and over again. And the snapshots. I try to tell everybody it's a snapshot every week. It doesn't mean anything. I'll get to a couple of reactions to the snapshot here in a moment. The compilation of snapshots. All right. But in the end, you have, in all likelihood, 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams, Notre Dame, then an ACC, a Big 12, and probably in the end, a Mountain West champion. You have 4 and 4. Everybody thought that was a distinct possibility when the season began. It may not be the 4 you think, because in the Big Ten, it's Indiana. The 4 you probably would think of in the SEC are there.
Yeah.
Alabama, Georgia, Texas, right?
Tennessee.
And Tennessee. I mean, those 4, I think everybody kind of thought, Ole Miss was probably the one they were looking at as maybe a possibility because it could bump maybe somebody else out.
And they sniffed it to the end.
Right. And they beat Georgia. Right? They beat Georgia. In the Big Ten, I'm sure people thought, going in, hey, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. Remember, Michigan started the season up there. All of a sudden, everybody watched the games and went, are they just, do they do a lottery every week among the students to see who gets to play quarterback?
I was offered the role of quarterback. Sadly, I don't have any eligibility remaining, which I know you're heartbroken about.
Yeah. But they ended up 7-5. But it's Indiana that had a marvelous season. The interesting part about Indiana is what's killed them is the strength of schedule.
Yeah, they have the 65th ranked strength of schedule, which is where there was this whole argument amongst ADs over on social media where athletic directors for SMU, Iowa State, I believe, and I think Ole Miss all were going back and forth saying strength of schedule apparently doesn't matter at all and it's criminal. How dare Indiana be in? And everyone's thought was they won the games they had to play. They won 11 games and you didn't.
Well, I thought, and I've had Holly Rowe on the show before, and Holly's a BYU grad. And it came up when the last time I had her on the show, and she says, let me ask you. She says, Steve, 1984, I said, you're the national champion. So you were the only undefeated team left. She says, oh, I love you. She was all happy about it. But that's how I feel about it. If you go through and you negotiate, what's in front of you, and they go 11-1, I'm sorry. They're 11-1. Now, I know the Indiana schedule was crafted in such a way where the first 3 games that they played, or whatever, the 3 non-conference games, I don't know if it was the first 3 they played, their 3 non-conference games were meant to get them wins, so they only needed 3 wins to get to a bowl game in conference. I'm being fair about this.
It was 1, 2, and 4 in their schedule. Yeah. FIU, Western Illinois, they then went to UCLA and then played Charlotte at home.
In Charlotte?
Charlotte at home.
Okay. I mean, those 3 games were put together to get them 3 wins. So now you could go 3-6 in the conference, and you're in the bowl game. Okay? That's the way it was constructed. And anything else you get beyond that's gravy. Well, all I know is they kept going to the gravy boat over and over again and said, more gravy, more gravy. They went 11-1. You have to get credit. First of all, you played a Big Ten schedule and went 8-1 in your Big Ten schedule. And the only loss was on the road.
Mm-hmm. They still had to beat Michigan. They still had to beat Nebraska. Spoiler, Ohio State didn't beat Michigan. Nebraska's a good school.
Nebraska's not bad. They're good.
They're not bad. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Colorado. Like, they're a good team.
Yeah.
They weren't anything to laugh at. So, yes, Indiana had an easier schedule, an easier road through this, but they still had to win 11 games, and they did.
Okay, for anybody at Ole Miss, I mean, no offense, you should have won another game somewhere. I mean, you went on the road to play Florida, and you didn't win. Okay, this is when you had all the incentive to play. Florida's incentive to play was pride. And getting those younger players like Lagway and the tailback, in and playing. Lagway played well. But again, Ole Miss's offense, one of the more vaunted units in America, played another poor game. Right? And they're saying, well, we missed Trey Harris. Well, you know what? Everybody's got injuries. I mean, do you think Penn State's missed KJ Winston this year? I mean,
do you think Ohio State's missed Simmons?
I mean, do you think Simmons and the center, right, from Alabama, Seth McLaughlin, you think they missed them? I mean, people are missing people, okay? It's a long season of attrition. Everywhere you turn, somebody has an injury that is bothersome, okay? Indiana had to play a game without Rourke this year because of his thumb. The backup Jackson came in, was functional enough, and they won. Okay, Bo had to step into the second half of the Wisconsin game with Penn State down 13-10 and played well. He went 11-13. He had a great night running the ball. You got to get things done. So I don't want to hear that Trey Harris is out for you. Everybody's got people out. Everybody. You don't think Penn State would have loved to have had Keon Wiley and Zariah Fisher this year? They got hurt in the spring.
It would have been great to have KJ Winston. It would have been incredible to have
KJ Winston's one of the top safeties in America. I told Phil Steele that. You don't think they would have loved to have had him? You don't think they would have loved, in this game coming up, Donko? Alonzo Ford? Guys get hurt. Ohio State's offensive line was decimated because they lost 40% of their starters. And you're complaining about losing a wide receiver? He's a great player. I mean, I saw him in person for myself. He's a terrific player. But other people have lost players.
Oregon hasn't had Tez Johnson for a while. They were like, it's okay. We'll live without him. And they did. And they won every single game.
Right. I mean, I've seen the Oregon injury list. Mm-hmm. Right. They've got guys out. Penn State's had guys out. Penn State played without Wallace last week against Maryland. Okay. Now Harris is a great talent, but don't complain to me that he's out. Everybody has people out. Everybody. I mean, Michigan, to their credit, won the game the other day. Okay, Loveland, the tight end, didn't play. Will Johnson, the corner, didn't play. I mean, come on.
I know.
I mean, you can't complain about a guy when most teams are missing multiple guys. Teams are different today than they were in August. And, yeah, it's a big loss. I mean, you don't think Penn State would have loved to have had Nick Singleton to be 100% all the way through the season? Thank goodness now he's right around the 100% area now because, I mean, need him more than ever. But in mid-season, he was fighting through some stuff. Missed a game, fought through it in other games. It's football. It's what you need to do, so you can't do that. But it's hard when you miss. Penn State missed in 2016. In a 12-team playoff, this would have been the 6th time Penn State made it. Right? In a 12-team playoff, but it was 4. Well, those are the rules at the time. That's the way it goes. I mean, it's hard when you miss. So I understand how Ole Miss feels. I mean, I'm talking about because I broadcast for the team. I've sat in your shoes. I sat in your shoes in the NCAA tournament selection when I thought in 9 and 18, I thought they were deserving teams. Now in 9, 18, I don't know what the scenario was. 9, I do. San Diego State and Penn State were the last 2 teams out because the NIT had CM Newton told me. He says, "Well, we'd crafted our board." He says, "But we had 2 teams missing." And they said, "We told the NCAA he says you got to send us over the 2." They finally sent over Penn State and San Diego State. So they were like either the first team out or the second team out, one of the 2, whatever it was. And Penn State didn't make it. And then they won the NIT. Okay? I was on the plane flying back from Indianapolis, of all places, in 2020 when everybody's phones went off and said the NCAA tournament was canceled. I know how you feel. Right? Dave Kellum's a great guy, right? So you're sitting there on the outside looking in, and believe me, it's painful. You sit there and go, right? And you feel for the coaches and the players and the families. I mean, that's who you feel for, not for yourself. I mean, you don't feel that for yourself. But I'm saying that when you experience it and see how they react to it, there were tears on that plane. Right? I looked around, like people were just, because Penn State had been ranked in the top 10 that year. They'd spent time at number 9. They were absolutely a lock to get in, probably a 6, maybe a stretch to get to a 5, but they would have been no worse than a 6 seed. They're in. Like everybody else, they found out there's no tournament after all that. And it's not like Duke where every year you go all the time. Right? So I understand the emotions of Miami. I understand the emotions of Ole Miss completely. Now, once they'll eventually get this to 16. Now, I don't know if they'll do it incrementally and go to 14 first, then 16. But eventually it'll get to 16. You have to make a decision about what to do with the games on this particular weekend. Yes. Because these are lucrative for the conferences. Mm-hmm. Believe me, they're not paying $1.95 for the rights.
No. So let's go through these games real quick because this is going to lead into a question I have. So UNLV, Boise State, we'll start there in terms of the games. We're going to take Tulane Army out of it. They should not have an impact on the
It doesn't have an impact.
teams.
The interesting part to me is the game is at Army.
It is at
the
Army.
game's at Mikey Stadium. Tulane is going to have to play out in these conditions, and usually there's a gentle zephyr off the river.
So Boise State, UNLV. Give me prediction. Who do you think is going to win? Don't got to do score. Just where does your mind go? Genty, or do you take the team from Las Vegas?
Well, first of all, they played each other, and they played in Las Vegas. And they did a good job for the most part on Genty in the game. And, so I was impressed by that part of it because it ended up being a really close game between the two. But I just think that where's this game being played?
It is being played, I believe, on the Smurf turf.
Is it? So it's not a...
It is on the Smurf turf.
Okay. So, look, like I said, they played each other. And I just think that in this case, Boise State, I think will win by 10. And I'll tell you right now who's not bad. Mattson, the quarterback for Boise.
He's good.
You're talking about a guy that has 21 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. It's pretty darn good.
Not bad.
And Gentry's rushed for 2288.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a freak. He's a freak.
28 touchdowns.
Which I think math-wise, Steve, is pretty good by my standards.
Yeah, not bad.
So Boise State, the victor there. Iowa State, Arizona State. Noon, ABC, Big 12. This game is an interesting one. They're both pretty similarly ranked. You've got, for one side, Rocco Becht for Iowa State. You have Levitt for Arizona State. Both have about the same touchdown-interception ratio. The difference, in my head at least, is Cam Scatterbo. He's a real running back.
He's a 1,400-yard rusher. Makes a big difference in this game.
This game is being played in
Dallas.
AT&T, by the way.
Yeah,
and
that's
Dallas.
in Arlington, yeah. Last 5 games, Arizona State's played great. I mean, they have. I mean, the BYU thing was kind of freaky, especially the way they ended it. Like
putting a second back on the clock.
Well, no, it had nothing to do with that.
But just the end was weird.
I could care less about that. They're running straight. They're running backwards. He throws the ball like a sky ball, trying to end the game. I mean, I don't even know if it crossed the line of scrimmage. I'm sitting there like going, who came up with these ideas? I mean, you want to talk about bad? Mm-hmm. That was bad.
That was rough.
I'm watching it going, but it wasn't smart. I know you're trying to run the clock out. I got it. But you can't keep giving ground to do it by chunks.
I would have given it to handed the ball to Scatterbo and said, take it.
Just take a knee.
Or that.
Goodness sakes.
So right. Iowa State, Arizona State.
And then Iowa State, to its credit, when they were teetering, because they lost to Texas Tech and Kansas back, they won their last 3. And so I think I'm going to go the hot hand here and go Arizona State to win.
Sun Devils win. They would probably end up sitting at that 12 slot then, assuming Boise State wins, except we'll go next to the ACC title game, SMU Clemson, which could decide a lot of things.
SMU
or Clemson?
Well, first of all, Clemson's playing a home game.
It is in Bank of America in Charlotte.
Okay, it's in Charlotte, and that's not too far from the Clemson campus. Something tells me, though, that SMU is going to be bringing a boatload of fans. This is a gigantic game for them. Smith's a terrific running back. He really is.
Jennings is a good quarterback.
And Jennings, they kind of went back and forth on the quarterback thing for a long time till they settled on Jennings. And he can make mistakes. He's thrown 7 interceptions. Klubnik's only thrown 5. So I'm going to go with SMU because I think there's just something with Clemson that's missing. I mean, you look at the talent of Clemson, you ask yourself over and over again, why did that team lose 3 games? Now, Georgia, I understand. Yeah, they played Georgia in Atlanta, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, it's week 1.
Right, week 1, it was 6-0 at halftime. But then you look at the Louisville game, they didn't play great. Then you look at the South Carolina game, didn't play great. And remember, they had to come up with a miracle to win at Pitt. So Virginia Tech was close. I mean, the only game that they really handled anybody down the stretch was the Citadel. Mm-hmm. We're done with that one. I'm going to go with SMU.
SMU wins, which would then mean
Smooth.
We're sitting here. SMU will take the 3 seed. We'll give them that in the tournament because they get a bye.
Yes.
That would be Boise State gets the 4.
Yeah.
They are automatically at a bye as well. Arizona State would then sit at 12.
Yeah.
They would not be able to probably climb high enough up because no one else above them would lose. Mm-hmm. They're going to get that 12 slot, which is kind of a set in stone thing. It's going to be 3, 4, and 12 for these teams to get if that's the orientation of how they win. The question then becomes, okay, SEC, Georgia, Texas.
It's a rematch. Georgia went in to Austin and really beat the backside off them. Texas has 2 excellent tackles. Right? A lot of people think they're NFL caliber tackles. Walker and that Georgia defense ran roughshod over those guys. But, okay, and now let's go to the next part. The game's in Atlanta.
Again, home game for Georgia.
Right? Now, it was a home game for Texas the first time. So essentially a home game for Georgia. They're at Mercedes-Benz. But I think you learn something from the first time through, right? Look, if you don't match up well with a team, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, oh yeah, we're going to change some things up. The matchups are still wrong. But this is a little bit better matchup than people realize. And here's the issue. I'm not exactly enamored with Quinn Ewers, but I'm definitely not enamored with Carson Beck at quarterback.
They're both in the same place for me. They're both like good quarterbacks, but not like.
I mean, Beck did not throw interceptions against Georgia Tech. But it wasn't until the fourth quarter, for 3 quarters, is like I couldn't figure out, A, what Georgia was attempting to do, and B, where he was throwing the ball. I couldn't figure that out. Ewers doesn't give me the impression that he's got America's strongest arm. Against Georgia, he lollipopped a lot of passes. I'm like, wind up and throw the ball. Get into the coverage and throw a thing, will you? No. Wisner's a good running back. Georgia can't run the ball. I mean, and that's a big issue. Georgia is not a great running football team. They were ranked, 15 out of 16 in the SEC in rushing?
Yep. Not great.
And I don't think Etienne's playing in this game, right?
I don't believe he is, no.
I think that's big in this game. It's just, you've got 2 quarterbacks where you say, oh, okay, how about the quarterback matchup? Like the Big Ten championship game? Yeah. Holy mackerel. You've got Drew Aller and Dylan Gabriel. Wow, guys that can legitimately play the position. These guys came in with the big reps this season. Beck came in, big rep. Maybe he'll be the first overall pick. Ewers, he came back, extra year. He's going to be a first-round pick, the whole thing. And I think both these guys have been good. Okay? Like, awesome, great, good. Not mediocre, good. And I'll pick Texas to win because I think you learned something from the first time as to how you want to do, how you want to adjust to it. I think it makes a big difference.
So Texas wins. Georgia then gets their 3rd loss. Georgia would probably end up sitting pat, I think, at 5. They may drop down to 6.
Oh, no, they'll drop. No. They'll drop back because Notre Dame has to drop back.
Well, Notre Dame's above Georgia. It's Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia.
I'm saying that, but they can't be 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
remember, Notre Dame can't be 4. Georgia's got to go back.
Well, my point is, how far down is Georgia going to slide? They're currently sitting 5th. Notre Dame is sitting 4th in terms of the total number of rankings.
They beat Tennessee, right?
They beat Tennessee, I believe. So, yes. Okay. They did 31-17.
They'll still get a home game.
So they would then, you think they'd swap with Ohio State would be because Ohio State's currently sitting 6, Tennessee is 7, SMU's 8, Indiana's 9.
Well, first of all, if SMU wins, the 8th spot's open.
It's open.
So everybody would, right? Mm-hmm. But the issue you have is that the team that doesn't win Penn State, Oregon also slides back.
Yes. But
I think Tennessee's the team that goes on the road.
So Tennessee will still stay at that 7. You think, hypothetically, Georgia?
I think they'll go on the road. I think they'll slide back to 9.
Okay. Well, Tennessee currently is on the road, regardless, right now. They're on the road right now.
At 7, they would be at home.
Well, I'm talking about the one, Oregon 1, Texas 2.
Right.
Right now, they're on the road.
Somebody will slide.
Well, Tennessee
now is... You have to have 2 slides. 2 slides move them back to 9.
Well, okay. As things stand right now, playoff-wise, who is playing where? Penn State is the 5. Notre Dame 6, Georgia 7, Ohio State is 8, Tennessee is 9.
Right.
Will Georgia slide past Ohio State and Tennessee is the question.
They'll be ahead of them.
They'll be ahead of them. They are ahead of them right now. So would their 3rd loss affect it at all is my question. Doesn't affect it.
No.
Okay. So Georgia stays then. Let's assume they stay at 5. They sit. That just about solidifies then Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, or Penn State, Oregon. Flip those in and out. Right. Whoever is there, those are going to have the home games. That would then sit us with Ohio State, Tennessee as the first game. as the big one that would go down in Columbus that first week. We then have Georgia versus Indiana, I believe.
Well, I'm not going to get into that part. Let's just talk about the game on Saturday night.
The last game.
I'm not going to get into that part because it's just too much guesswork. I mean, it's too many darts.
The last game to discuss, which, of course, is the one you were going to be on the road for. You were going to be there, having yourself a great time. Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium, Penn State, Oregon. As things stand in terms of all of the numbers and whatever, Georgia, Texas is even right now, by the way, betting-wise. It is a complete draw and toss-up. As things stand for this game, it is Oregon by a field goal, so it's just about similarly a toss-up. Right. Oregon, Penn State, currently, where do you think this game is going? Give me the thought process you've got.
It goes into the second half and into the fourth quarter. I think there's a lot of great things to talk about in this game. One of them is going to be this. Let's go back to Oregon, Ohio State. What did Oregon do offensively in that game that was really outstanding? They took the two tackles, and they did a great job of Sawyer and Tuiomalo and pushing them out. And they did a really good job on the Ohio State defensive tackles to split them out, and that gave Gabriel a free lane to go up and climb the pocket and have a clear lane to throw the ball. This is where Zane Durant comes in. I talked to him yesterday about the All Big Ten vote. Deni Dennis Sutton was rather vocal to me about it.
Interesting.
Well, no, because...
But how they're both left off.
Well, Zane's not going to let... No, Deni was talking to me about Zane. He was not talking about himself.
Okay.
No.
Well, I thought they were talking to each other. Was my thought.
Right, but Deni was really vocal about Zane not being somewhere in one of the three teams. Mm-hmm. He's honorable mention. Okay, great. Watch a lot of football? No? Okay. And he becomes pivotal here because if they're going to do everything they can to get Carter somehow past Gabriel, they're going to do everything they can to somehow get him to go further around. If he climbs and Durant's there, it changes everything as to how Oregon plays because that's how they beat Ohio State. They moved the ends out and they took the tackles and split them. And by doing that, he climbed and threw it. If Penn State gets pressure, and it doesn't have to be just Carter and Deni, it could be Durant. That changes the dynamics of what happens with the Oregon offense. If Oregon can control that part of it, now he's got a chance to climb. He's got a chance to hit Holden. He's got a chance to hit Evan Stewart. Stewart had a great game against Ohio State. And we all know Tez Johnson is a terrific wide receiver, and Ferguson's a really good tight end. James, the running back, you got to be able to get some handle on him. Okay. But then defensively, Penn State's got to do a good job in those two ends, which means a guy like Nolan Rucci, who has played so much football this year, and I think he's played really well. And he's, you look at the last two games, Minnesota and Maryland, I think he played terrific football. If he has a good night, which I think he will, boy, does that help Drew. And they're going to concentrate everything they have. Not everything, but they're going to concentrate on Warren.
Well, I'm so surprised by that, Steve.
But everybody has. This is the point I made to James in the postgame. I said, look, he's the number one guy in everybody's scouting report, and he's still getting 6 to 8 catches a game. It's and this is where a guy like Harrison Walls can make a difference for them. Singleton out of the backfield can make a difference. Katron Allen can make a difference, right? And Drew's a much better quarterback than people realize. Like, way better than some people realize. Same story with him. He ended up honorable mention. Honorable mention? Like, what was he supposed to do this year? So that's where I look at it. The kicking games are relatively similar. The return game, you got to get control on on what they do with their return game. I mean, Tez Johnson's taken one back for a touchdown this year. I mean, he's fully healthy. So, I mean,
Nick Singleton's taken one back. It was called back, but it was taken back.
He also had a 66-yarder against Maryland.
And that could have very easily been if he gets just a little bit further around the edge.
Right. Yep.
He's in.
I mean, Singleton's
he's a lightning rod.
Well, again, somebody told me that the network did a next gen on him on that play on the 66-yarder, and they said he was like 21 and a half.
It was the fastest anyone's run this season, I believe, or one of the top speeds in the Big Ten or something like that. It was something absurd.
So, I mean, look, it's a fun game. And as I've told everybody, when you get to this stage, everybody who plays good.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
There are no teams here who are objectively bad.
No.
Every team's good for some reason. They're all 12 teams here. And some teams may have flaws. Everyone's got a flaw.
And everybody has confidence because they've been winning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who Indiana plays in the first round. They've got confidence. They've been winning.
They're coming in expecting to win because they've been crushing it. Yeah.
I don't think they're going to lose. So
they're going to go to Georgia and be like, hey, Bulldog, let's go.
I mean, we'll see how it all plays out on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It'll be a very fun next few days. Yep. We'll have coverage. You'll, of course, be there in Indianapolis.
Jack Ham and Brad Nessler tomorrow on the show.
Which is as good as it gets tomorrow. And if you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the coverage, the games, everything going on sports-wise here, because there's a lot going on. You're going to be tonight in the Bryce Jordan Center watching Penn State against Purdue. All of our coverage is at 7mmsports.com or 7 Mountain Sports on Facebook and Sports7mm over on Twitter.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on Sports Talk with Steve Jones.